Wednesday webinar. Today I'm coming to you from Bucacia, which is near Mackay. I'm Julia Hartman from the Bantax National Accountants Group, and I'm going to talk about your main residence exemption. Certainly not something that should be taken for granted. You've got to establish that you moved into the property. You've got to be able to prove that. The onus of proof is on you. So one of the things I recommend people do is keep their receipt for the delivery of their furniture. If they get removalists in, that is an excellent way of proving when you moved in. Now, like some cases that should worry you. Early in 2008, there's a couple that spent a lot of time at their daughter's place. Apparently that's bad. They lost the case at the AAT, and one of the main things the ATO used against them was that they had a very small electricity bill, so they couldn't have been there at the place very often. So it's a shame their home was subject to capital gains tax when they sold it. Another case was in 2008, when Summers decided that she wanted to cover a shed with her main residence exemption. The ATO took umbrage at this. They took her to court and argued very derogatorily towards her that it wasn't fit for habitation, the shed, and even though they accepted that yes, she slept there, she got attacked for her marital status, her age, her long working hours, etc. In the court, because some of the factors they considered was that the shed didn't have a shower, it had toilet facilities, and that it had limited cooking facilities. So she was very strange if she should consider that her home. It was disgusting. Anyway, fortunately the AAT ruled in the taxpayer's favour, and she was allowed to claim that place, that shed, as her home. It is not a question of suitability for living, it's a question of fact when you make it your home. So that's fine to the taxpayer. Another case more recently was Keep's case in 2013. This should interest fly-in, fly-out workers because they're away from home more often than they are home. There was a couple of unfortunate things in this case. In particular, he collected the electricity in his girlfriend's name and they broke up. She wasn't prepared to give him a copy of the electricity bill, so he couldn't prove that the electricity was connected. But also, some of the problems he had was that he used his sister's address quite a bit. When he was on his week off, sometimes he didn't go back to the house, he stayed at his sister's place, it was closer to work, and he got a lot of mail sent to his sister's place too, and that was the address on his tax return. So he lost the argument that the other home was his main residence. Don't take it for granted. Recently, some clients moved to a house in Melbourne, and they were there for less than a year because they didn't like the area and they came back to Mackay. So both years' tax returns had a Mackay address on them, and the ATO figured that the place in Melbourne was not covered by their main residence exemption. Now, they originally moved down to her sister's place, so the removalist documentation wasn't for the home that they were covering with their main residence exemption, and when they moved from her sister's place to their home, all their friends chipped in and utes and got all the gear over there, so they didn't have a removalist docket. Fortunately, they did go to the trouble of changing their their address on their licence, and they were working down that way. And eventually, after much argument, the ATO accepted that yes, that was covered by their main residence exemption, but there was a lot of angst involved in that, and you really don't want to come up against it, so the more records you have, the better. And think about this when you move in and keep them, because you might move out in 20 years' time. Less of a problem there. But one thing for sure is if you've got a sitting tenant in the property when you move in, when you buy it, then you can't move in, it can't be covered by your main residence exemption right from the start, and if that is the case, then you'll always have a sleeping capital gains tax nightmare, and you'll have to keep records during that whole time. Well, thank you for staying through to the end, and I hope to see you next week.